the most important and famous Mexican painters of the 20th century was Diego Rivera. Diego Rivera did a lot of work in mosaic, but he did painting also. This is a painting of a Dr. Otto Rubel done in 1940. What's fascinating or unique about this particular work is the fauve technique. Fauve is spelled F-A-U-V-E. It is the use of very intense and highly saturated colors. If you look at this painting, you'll see that the blue is extremely intense against the yellow, highly saturated. If you look at Dr. Rubel's eyes, you'll see that the eyes are extremely blue and match, to an extent, the colors in the shirt and in the background. So we are very lucky to be able to see this painting by Diego Rivera. This is the head, or idol, if you will, of the rain god Tlaloc. Now, the rain god Tlaloc is someone the natives would pray to for rain, and the rain and fertility that was so important to them. What's interesting is the head comb that comes off the nose. Quite often with the deities, you will see noses which have extensions. They were very much into big noses, and so I want you to look closely at this, and also notice that there's a serpent motif just above the mouth, and so serpents are very important to them, and these frogs too. The frogs are always associated with water and fertility. This is what's called a Xipe or Shipe, spelled X-I-P-E, impersonator from the Toltec people. Why we're so fascinated in this particular statue is because it illustrates what the priests would do in that religion. They would take a person, most likely a prisoner, and skin that individual alive, and then wear the skin and wear the face. And as you can see, there is a face behind the face. So the face, if you look closely on this one, you'll see that there are two sets of lips. That's because the face is been put over this face. If you come behind it, you will see that it is tied together in the back. The skin looks flayed because what they did is they only had obsidian knives, and so they would cut off the skin of the prisoner, the victim, and the priest would then wear the skin and the face of this person. And even today you can still see the red caused by all the blood that was created. They believed that this gave the priest great fertility because he had the blood was on him, and that gave him power, which in turn then translated into power for the people. And so his incantations would be much more powerful because he had the blood on him, literally. You'll see this in many religions, that the blood is the most important element, and in this case he's literally wearing the blood of someone else to gain fertility. So this was obviously important to the religion of these people. We're looking at a famous Mayan relief of the lady Bolan Khan, who has one of the attributes of royalty among the Maya, and that is she has a scarified nose. If you look closely at the nose, you'll see that it's kind of bumpy, and it looks like it comes out of the head. That is because they would take a knife when she was a baby, cut the nose, and it would make a great scar. And then sometimes they would cut the scar also and make an even bigger scar, so that it looked like her nose was coming out of her head. This would give her a quality of being different from normal people, and when people would see that big nose, they would know that she was royalty. This piece is also famous because you can still see some of the original color on it, the reds and the blues and so forth, which have somehow survived through the centuries. Here's a wonderful example of Spanish colonial art. This is, of course, a painting of the Virgin Mary, and the important piece in this painting is that she's wearing white with a little bit of red. The white, of course, implies virginity. The red implies motherhood. And this fact that she has just a little bit of red tells us that she is now pregnant. So the Christ child is within her, and she is, therefore, has been given a sort of deity crowned. You can see she's wearing the crown. She's still very young. And you'll notice down below, you'll see that she's standing on a crescent moon. This is a very common motif in art dealing with the Virgin Mary. And also we often see the serpent, and here's the serpent, and she's being held up by what's called a pudo, which is a small angel-like creature, in this case only the head, but around the edge of the painting you will see the putti, P-U-T-T-I, the putti, and the putti are in some ways associated with the mother, and you have each one something growing out of the heads symbolic. For example, you'll see lilies, which are associated with her. You'll see cedar trees and so on. Down below here on the left is Jesus, now grown, and on the right is St. Francis of Assisi. Here's another wonderful example of Spanish colonial art. In this one, we have Mary again, but the child is with her. So you notice she's wearing more red than she was before. You also notice down below the crescent moon again, and you also see the putti, who are in the role of holding Mary up, as it were. Jesus looks like a miniaturized older person, and Mary in her right hand is holding a rosary. The rose is the flower associated with Mary, and in the upper left-hand corner you'll see a pudo who is holding roses, a basket of roses, and you'll see many other putti who are roundabout looking at Mary and part of the scene. Here we have a colonial Spanish painting of Christ atop the world, or perhaps it could be a darkened moon. This isn't actually very clear. This is unusual in that most of these paintings will have a crescent moon, but this particular painting has a globe. But you still have the putti, and above the putti are holding up Christ, who's holding the Sacred Heart, his Sacred Heart. Above him is the dove representing the Holy Spirit, and then above the dove is God the Father, which is in imitation, of course, of Michelangelo's famous painting in the Sistine Chapel of God. This is pretty much a copy of that particular version of God. So you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all in one painting here. You have on the right, you have Joseph. He has the Sacred Heart. You have Mary on the left. She has her Sacred Heart. She has the milk ready for her child. In the upper left and right corners, you will see the putti again, holding symbols that are important in the life of Christ. In the right, for example, you will see a ladder, and on the ladder, you will see a Veronica. Now, a Veronica is a scarf. A lady along the Passion route of Christ, called the Via Dolorosa, gave him a handkerchief to wipe his face, and when she got the handkerchief back, it had the impression of the face of Christ on it. You'll notice at the very top of the cross it says I-N-R-I. Well, the I, of course, stands for J in English, so that'd be Jesus, N for Nazareth, R for Rex, which means king, and then I again for Jews. So it means Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Here we have another painting which Mary is prominent. Mary, the Holy Spirit, and God in the version that we see in the Sistine Chapel of Michelangelo. Mary is standing here on a crescent moon with lilies. Lilies are another flower associated with her, along with roses. She is standing above the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve are getting ready to eat of the apple. And below the Adam and Eve section is the serpent. In this case, the serpent has many heads. Now, on both sides of the Garden of Eden, you have the parents of Mary, and they are very devoted to their daughter, who is carrying the child Jesus. The reason we know that is because she has, wearing white, but she has a little string, a little belt, if you will, that's red. And that tells you, of course, that she is with child. So the colors of Mary are typically white, red, and blue. And you see all three of those colors here. The putti, again, are above with the roses. And in the very far right-hand corner, upper right-hand corner, you'll see the temple in Jerusalem. So everything here is symbolic and important in the symbolism of the birth, the coming birth of Jesus. This is Isaac Sawyer's Art Beauty Shop, painted in 1934. Example of fauve, example of beautiful American painting which captures the era beautifully. This is Ernest Blumenschein's well-known painting Mountains Near Taos, painted in the late 1920s and early 30s. Beautiful use of color here to show the intensity of beauty in the mountains. You do see a few adobe huts in the bottom, but mankind is basically blended in with the beauty of nature, the intensity of nature, which Blumenschein is trying to show here in this painting. This is Thomas Hart Benton's painting, Prodigal Son, a Depression-era painting in a style very typical of Thomas Hart Benton. Quite often there's a story behind the painting, and in this case the prodigal son has finally come home, but by the time he gets there, the home place is long gone. Among the most beautiful and important works at the Dallas Museum of Art is The Icebergs by Frederick Church. This incredible piece of art, it's a painting of icebergs floating in the ocean, which actually look like huge mountains. If you look carefully, you will see where Church has played with certain themes and ideas in this painting, but the most important detail is that it's all about nature and has almost nothing to do with man, except for the hint that man has been here and has shipwrecked. There's a mast that is still laying on the iceberg, but otherwise man has been conquered and ice is supreme. This is an interesting religious figure from the Congo. This deity, if you will, or our character, has in it many nails and pieces of metal. People would often come to this site and enter into agreements or contracts by putting a metal into the body. And these metals then represented in a pre-literate culture their attempt to solidify the agreement that they had made. And the religion that this represents, this figure represents, is the religion in which they are making the agreement. What we have here is a coffin from ancient Egypt. This coffin is in the form of one of the most important Egyptian gods, whose name was Osiris. You'll see the ceremonial beard, and you see the big hair, and these obsidian eyes, which seem to, even after all these centuries, seem to stare at you. This is particularly beautiful work of art with a mummy inside. In ancient Hindu art, you have many beautiful women portrayed. This is the heavenly nymph, Asparza, who is dancing and moving and is sensually beautiful and considered to be a divine reward. This is the Hindu god Shiva with his consort Parvati. They are in a love embrace because they are a one unit of love and appreciation. In fact, Parvati is a manifestation of the creative imagination of Shiva. Here we have Garros' famous painting of Oedipus at Colonus, painted in 1788. This is very typical classical painting in that the subject matter is from Greek mythology. You have a temple in the background. You have Oedipus, who has blinded himself for marrying his own mother and murdering his own father. And the daughters that he had with his own mother are Antigone and Ismene, and they are here taking care of their father who is blind. It is a typical classical painting. This is Pierre's most impressive painting, known as The Abduction of Europa, 1750. Sometimes called the Rape of Europa, because Europa has been taken off by the bull, who is actually Zeus. Zeus, in fact, is in this painting twice. He is the bull. He is also the eagle above. And here is Europa, very innocent, being carried across some water where she is about to be raped. You'll also notice the putti that are above her, which indicate that she is divine. When the putti are present, you usually have divinity present. What I want you to look for in this painting is the third or farthest putti away does not have regular angel wings, but has dragonfly wings. This is one of the great puzzles of this painting. Look for this if you come to the museum, and look for those dragonfly wings. See if you can figure out why you have dragonfly wings. Here we have Vernet's well-known painting, Mountain Landscape with Approaching Storm, painted in 1775. This painting is quite different from the classical paintings we have just viewed. This painting is in a new style called Romantic. It's romantic because the emphasis now is no longer on people or deities, but it's on nature. Most of the painting is about nature, natural landscape. You do have some people in the painting. They are peasants who are fishing in the water and have gotten caught, as it were, in this approaching storm and are trying to leave very quickly. In the Romantic teachings and doctrines, it was okay to have people, common people, people of nature in a painting, but you very rarely will see people who are aristocrats in a Romantic painting. But the emphasis is the power of nature and how man is subject to nature. This is Mignard's 1654 painting of the shepherd bringing Romulus and Remus to his wife. It is extraordinary in that you have three women representing the three sides of the mother goddess. You have the mother, who is represented in red. You have the young virgin, who is in light blue. And then you have the crone, or the mother, in her final stage. All three of these women are taking into their care Romulus and Remus. You might remember that Romulus and Remus went on to found Rome. And you also see on the roof the doves. You always find doves associated with the mother goddess. So if you see them, you might know that the mother goddess is nearby. Romulus and Remus had been raised by a wolf, and in the very extreme right of this painting you'll see a wolf who is sort of standing by as the shepherd brings in these boys to be taken care of. What we have here is a Roman sarcophagus. A sarcophagus is a stone coffin in which a person would be laid, and over the body would be poured lime, so that in a period of time the lime would eat the body. That's why it's called a sarcophagus. Sarco in Latin means flesh, and phagus means to eat. And so a sarcophagus, meaning to eat the flesh, is a stone box that is decorated, in this case carved, to illustrate whatever the profession of the person who is buried in it. This was a military sarcophagus, so most likely soldiers and officers were buried in this sarcophagus, which would be used over and over again, because once the lime had eaten the body in about a year, they would take out the bones, place them elsewhere, and then reuse the stone sarcophagus, which is a work of art in its own right. The poet and musician Orpheus was famous in that he could tame the animals with his music. You notice on his head that he has a hat. This is supposed to be a pointed hat, which would indicate that Orpheus came from the East. The Romans would indicate Eastern deities or Eastern religion with a pointed hat. And so Orpheus has this pointed hat, and so he was brought into Rome and became an important deity, and his religion or cult, if you will, became an important Roman mystery religion. This is the head of a priest of one of those imported Eastern mystery religions. We don't know which religion this priest belonged to, but we know he's from a mystery religion because he has a pointed hat. A pointed hat is your sign that the person is related in some way to one of the Eastern religions. Henry Moore was a well-known 20th century sculptor. This is his piece that he did in the 1970s, known as Reclining Mother and Child. The Windmill is an early 20th century painting by Mondrian. This painting was done in the period of time where he was still doing representational painting. You can look at this painting and see that it is a windmill. But Mondrian was about to change to a very different style, a non-representational style, which is known as abstract art. Mondrian, after the period in which he was doing impressionistic paintings, decided to change to non-representational paintings, sometimes called abstract paintings, and this is a very good example of such a painting. This painting is called Place de la Concorde, was done in the late 1930s. Very typical Mondrian. We're in a wing of the Dallas Museum of Art known as the Reeves Collection. The Reeves were originally from Dallas and had a villa in the south of France. When Wendy Reeves decided to give the collection she and her husband had created in that villa, she wanted the artwork to be displayed in the same setting it had been in the villa. So the villa was recreated here in the Dallas Museum of Art. One of the most famous paintings in the villa, and now in the Dallas Museum of Art, in the entrance, is Van Gogh's Sheaves of Wheat, a beautiful painting to be sure, and one that is well known around the world. Kandinsky was an early 20th century painter who painted first in the style known as Fauve, and then later became well known as a abstract painter. This painting, the villages or the houses of Morneau, was painted about 1908 and illustrates the beauty of that style that he was painted at that time.